I need to welcome some special guests today. Our guests, I'm going to start with Silka Kempema. Silka, can you wave your hand? Thank you. Silka is from South Dakota Game Fish and Parks. She's going to talk to us today, and I would also like to introduce Sandy Richter. Sandy, can you wave? There she is. She's the one with all the bats in the background. She's from South Dakota Game Fish and Parks as well. And then we have Laura Woods, and Laura is from Nice Bats. Laura, can you wave? Yes. Good. So now we have everybody who's going to be speaking today. We're going to get started with Silka, and she's going to talk to us about making the case for Myotis. And maybe she'll tell us what Myotis is first. Thanks, Silka.
Hi, Thea. Can you hear me okay? Sometimes I have issues here with my speaker.
Cutting out just a little bit. You might want to lean a little closer to your computer.
Yeah. How about this? Is this a little bit better?
It is.
Okay. I'll go ahead and share my screen here quick. Okay, so thank you for having me. Today I'm going to talk about the kind of the biological aspect of bats and a little bit more about bats in South Dakota. A few topics. We're going to first define what a bat is. And then I'm going to try and make a case for Myotis or all bats in general. Whoops. Excuse me here while I get used to Zoom and PowerPoint at the same time. I'll talk about the bat species that we find in our state. I'll touch on diseases, and then I'll leave you with a few additional resources just in case you want to do some information digging on your own. So first, what is a bat? I'll try and use the classifications that biologists use, what's commonly referred to taxonomy, and bats are mammals, just like we are. They're warm-blooded, they have hair, or in an animal's case, fur, and they nurse their living young. Bats can fly. Bats are in the order Chiroptera, and Chiroptera means hand wing. In the diagram, if you look to the right, you can see that the wing of a bat is essentially an elongation of its fingers that are connected to the arms and the legs by a patagia or a skin, and that makes up a bat's wing. And bats are the only mammal that are capable of true flight. There are flying squirrels, but that's a misnomer. Flying squirrels glide, so they simply go from point to point. They are not capable of true sustained flight. Bats are long-lived. This is something that's unique for a mammal that's this size. So adult bats usually have a high survival rate, and at least for the bats in South Dakota, they can live 10, 20, 30 plus years. And that's really something special for an animal that's this small. Bats are good parents. Bat species typically invest a large amount of energy and time into rearing their young. Again, what's a little bit unique about bats, especially given their smaller size, is that they only give birth to 1 or 2 pups a year. Their gestation period, or the time period that they're pregnant, is also quite long for an animal their size. So depending on the species, it's 3, 5, or 7 months during which a female is pregnant. And the photo I have here is kind of a photo to help remind me when a pup is born, it weighs about 33% of the mother's weight. And these females must be super moms or super something because they can fly with their young attached. So that's quite a strong mother. The thing that most people characterize bats by is the fact that they can echolocate. So echolocation is essentially a biological sonar. Waves are emitted from a bat's mouth. They hit an object or an individual those waves bounce back and the bat hears or receives those sound waves, and they can both navigate and they find their prey using echolocation. So this is what we call an echolocation sonogram. On the x-axis is time in milliseconds, and on the y-axis is kilohertz, so that's essentially wavelength. The echolocation sound of a bat is out of the range of human hearing. However, biologists like myself can hear and see a bat's echolocation using an acoustic detector or a heterodyne detector. It takes the sound frequency and lowers it into the range of human hearing. And if any of you are familiar with birds, which I am as well, if you hear a bird singing, you can tell what species it is based on the song that it sings. Bats are similar in that when you hear or see its echolocation sonogram, you can tell what species it is. And it's not as 100% as with birds, but you can get pretty close. Oftentimes it depends on the quality of the recording or how far or near the bat is to you. So hopefully this works. I have a recording of one of the species that is found in South Dakota, and I'll go ahead and try and play that. And hopefully I can see some heads shaking if this actually works. Whoops. Oh, I don't think maybe it did. Oh no. Okay, I'm going to try this one more time, and if it doesn't work, I'll just continue. Did folks hear that? No? Okay. So it's true, bats do not have 20/20 vision, but despite the fact that they echolocate, their vision is average. So when you hear that bats aren't blind or bats are blind, that's not necessarily true. So just a recap of kind of what we've covered. Bats are not birds. They can fly, but they're not birds. Bats aren't rodents, even though they're small, they're furry and they're brown, and they might remind you of flying mice. They are definitely not rodents, and that's because they have low reproductive rates and they live a long time. And bats are not blind. So I'm going to try to make the case for Myotis, and I will define what Myotis is, but not just yet. Hopefully I'll show or give you some good reasons to at least develop an appreciation, if not to care that we have bats in our world. So first, bats are really diverse. There's 1,000 bat species in the world, and this makes up 25% of all the mammal species that we have on Earth. The map shown below, the colored areas, show all the places in the world where bats are found. The colors that you see on the map are representative of the number of species in different places in the world. So the red areas are the areas that have highest species richness. Those dark red areas have about 120 some species, which is really, really diverse. In the US, at least the lower 48, there are 47 species of bats, and they're found throughout the states. And similarly with the colors, we have the highest bat species richness found in the warmer parts of the country in the Southwest. And they have about 25 bat species. So with so many different species of bats, they're gonna look and do things differently. So the next series of slides I'm gonna show you is just to give you show you some examples of how different bats can be different sizes, shapes, and colors. And with the shapes, pay special attention to the nose, ears, and eyes. It's really kind of it's really interesting. Bats can provide us services. So just in their daily living, the things that they do are of benefit to humans. And one of the first things and easiest things is bats eat bugs, and they eat lots of bugs. Bats are the major predator of night flying insects. A pregnant female can eat its body weight in bugs. And this pest control is of value to agriculture and up to human health. There are also bat species that are pollinators, and they pollinate a variety of foods that people eat every day. And I think I like all of these except the coconut up on the top right there. The plant on the bottom right is an agave, and that is what tequila is made out of. Fruit-eating bats provide seed dispersal services. In tropical regions, they help reforest. And yes, there are vampire bats. There are 3 species of vampire bats, none of which live in South Dakota or the United States for that matter. Most of these species live in either Central and primarily South America. And even having these species that consume blood, there has been some value. Science and medicine has learned things about the anticoagulation properties or coagulation properties of blood by studying these species. So more specifically, bats in South Dakota. All of the bats are in the family Vespertilionidae, and that essentially means the plain-nosed bats. These vespers are small to medium-sized bats. They have small eyes, and they eat bugs. There's 13 species known to live in South Dakota. Here we've got a list of all the species that we've found in the state. On the left is the common name, and on the right or in the middle column is the scientific name. The first name is the genus, and the second name is the species or the specific epithet. The one thing I want to point out is that we have a lot of Myotis species in South Dakota, and Myotis means mouse-eared. The other thing I wanted to point out on this table is the distribution of these species, so either east or west of the Missouri River. 8 of the species we have in South Dakota are found statewide. We have 4 species that are restricted to the areas that have a lot of topological relief in western South Dakota, so either the Black Hills, the Badlands, or the Cave Hills in northwestern South Dakota. And then that last bat, that evening bat, that's restricted to the extreme southeastern part of the state. And the next couple of slides will be pictures of the bats that we have in South Dakota. This one is definitely not a Myotis. The bats that we find in South Dakota can be either categorized as cave bats or tree bats. And it describes the habitat that they live in, and it also is descriptive of what they do during a South Dakota winter. So cave bats are the bats that you typically think of. They spend their winters underground in caves or mines, hibernating. And hibernation is a very unique life strategy for bats. During the fall, they gather fat stores, they eat lots, and they store fat. Over the winter, they enter a state of torpor. And this means that their body temperature is lowered and they have much slower rates of respiration, circulation, and metabolism. And even though they're in hibernation or in torpor, it's normal for a bat to wake up just a little bit every now and again. One of the key things that we always talk about when we're talking about bat conservation is to reduce the amount of disturbance at a hibernacula. Even human entrance into a cave, just your body heat and whatever minimal noise you would make could potentially rouse a bat during hibernation. And each additional time a bat is woken up during hibernation, it eats and uses some of those fat stores. And if they use up those fat stores before spring comes or before bugs are available to eat, a bat wouldn't make it through the winter. There's one large hibernacula in South Dakota at Jewel Cave, and Jewel Cave has about 1,500 bats, give or take, depending on the year. And relatively speaking, this is a small hibernacula. There's some hibernacula in the eastern U.S. that are thousands and thousands of bats. The other three species we have in South Dakota are the migratory or solitary tree roosting bats. And just as you might expect, they spend most of their time alone or with their young in trees. The major difference between the tree bats and the cave bats, other than the habitat, is that they do not hibernate. They will migrate to warmer climates where bugs are somewhat available, and they will go into torpor, but it's not as long or as deep as the cave hibernating bats. So what if you want to attract, excuse me, bats to your property or to your house? Just like with bird boxes, or bird houses, there are bat boxes. Game Fish and Parks did a study a number of years ago to try and figure out what bat box design was most suited for South Dakota's climates. The bat box on the right hand is called a rocket box, and this is the box that bats took to most readily. One of the things we thought was going on was that the pole that you see the box on top of, it's a steel pole, and when it heated up during the day, it would maintain that heat and maintain the temperatures inside the bat box overnight. So that's one of the reasons that we thought the bats were taking to that rocket box. But the box on the far left, we called that the BCI box, or the Bat Conservation International box, was a 4-chambered house that's a little bit easier to make and cheaper also, that bats took readily to as well in South Dakota. And bat plans are readily available on the internet, and I'd also be willing to share the plans for that rocket box and the BCI box, some of the specifics that we did during that study. So disease, that's one thing that's always brought up when bats are discussed. The first disease I'm going to talk about is white nose syndrome. So this is a fungal disease of hibernating bats. It's the fungus that caused this disease is not native to North America. It was thought to be brought here by humans somehow from either Europe or Asia, and it was first introduced on the East Coast in 2006, I think. When the fungus gets into one of the hibernacula and it infects the skin, there are very high mortality rates, like 95, 99% mortality rate in hibernacula. Transmission of the disease is primarily bat-to-bat contact. And in terms of humans managing the disease or reducing the impact to bats is somewhat limited at this point. What we can best do is control the human spread of the fungal spores, so preventing entrance into hibernacula, or if humans do go into hibernacula, making sure that they're not bringing that fungus with them. So there's certain decontamination protocols that biologists have developed to help reduce that spread. Now, white nose syndrome, it's not a human health concern, and I have Myotis listed there as this group of species. Usually, the smaller species are the ones that have shown to be most susceptible to white nose syndrome. And rabies. Rabies is a disease, a viral disease that affects the central nervous system of mammals, and this includes both humans and bats. Occurrence of rabies in the wild in North American bats is less than 1%. The statistics I have here are from the South Dakota Department of Health Lab. So over the last 10 years in South Dakota, of all the bats that were tested, 3% were rabid. For domestic animals, 28% were rabid, and of the skunks that were tested, 48% were rabid. So, you know, there is a chance that you can get rabies if you're bitten by a bat, but there's also a really strong chance that even, you know, your cat or your dog can give you rabies as well. So I think sometimes bats get a bad rap when it comes to rabies, but make no mistake, rabies is a serious disease. So in terms of prevention, the best and the easiest is just don't handle wild animals. And in my case, and there's some other jobs too that you might have higher chance of being exposed to rabies. There are pre-exposure shots that you can get that help reduce your chances of actually contracting the disease if you're bit. And if for any reason, if you think you may have been bit by a rabid animal, get that animal tested and contact your healthcare provider. The sooner the better, because there are shots you can get after being exposed to rabies. Histoplasmosis, that's a fungal infection of the lungs of mammals and birds. You don't hear so much about it in South Dakota. It's fairly uncommon west of the Mississippi. We just don't have the moisture or the humidity levels that histoplasmosis likes. You can get histoplasmosis from the disturbance of large amounts of bird or bat droppings, such like in a hibernacula, or if it's in contaminated soil that's been disturbed. So the best things for prevention is to minimize exposure to any dust in potentially contaminated areas, spraying the area with water, you know, to reduce the amount of dust, and wearing a protective mask is also a way to prevent histoplasmosis. So I'll touch just briefly on this. I anticipate at least some questions on it, but before I even go into it, you know, I'm not an expert on this, and it is, you know, there's so many unknowns with COVID-19, but bat to human transmission, there's been a lot of information in the news that this is a virus that jumped from bats to humans. And the similarity of the virus that causes COVID-19, or at least the genetic similarity to that, and the one that causes SARS, which has known to become from bats, is what has led people to say that the virus causing COVID-19 is from bats. I don't think that has been proven to this point. There's a lot of evidence that suggests it is, but there's still more to be learned about that. In terms of humans giving bats COVID-19, this is probably something that you hadn't thought of. But in my line of work, there is concern that bats on this continent may also be susceptible to COVID-19. So there's restrictions on wildlife biologists such as myself actually handling bats, at least for the time being, for fear that we would give COVID-19 to bats, especially to a naive population that's on this continent. And one of the other things I wanted to mention as well, with bats, one of the major things that I think prevents conservation is a lack of understanding or misinformation about bats. there's lots of talk about, diseases jumping from wildlife to humans, and bats oftentimes are pointed as a source of those diseases, but birds, just as well as chimpanzees and other wildlife species, have also been sources of spillover of wildlife to human diseases. So just briefly touching on that, since it's such so prevalent in our lives right now. And a few places that if you wanted to go for more information about bats, the South Dakota Bat Working Group, it's a small group of bat biologists that live and work in South Dakota, and almost anything you'd want to know about bats is on this website. So if you just Google South Dakota Bat Working Group, we'll take you to this website. And then also, I mentioned Bat Conservation International. This is also a really good clearinghouse of information about bats and a variety of bat-related topics. And so just a few acknowledgements, especially the folks that have shared photos. And then with that, I could turn it over to Laura to talk about bats and buildings.
Before you go, Silka, I have a question from one of our members who's watching. She
Sure.
asked, does a bat make any vocalization other than the echolocation sound? She said she had bats in her attic a few years ago and thought she could hear them squeaking.
Yeah, yes, they actually do, and I know what she's talking about. They do make sounds like, yeah, more like a squeaking or a chirping that humans can hear, and it's really kind of unique. Those bat sonograms that I showed you, you can see the differences in the different types of calls, and I'm not talking about among species differences. I'm talking about a feeding buzz, a sound that it makes right before it catches an insect and eats it, or a social call. They're just kind of talking, socializing, or the actual echolocation call, like what you saw just displayed on the screen there. So yes, there are some sounds that they make that we can hear, and I'm not even exactly sure what that is. It may be young and adults talking to each other, the females and the young, but yeah, they do make those noises for sure.
Interesting, good. Thank you. Anybody else? She said, I knew I wasn't nuts.
Oh, she's not.
Good. If anybody else has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. If you don't know where the chat box is, generally it's at the bottom of your screen. When you move your mouse over it, a box will pop up that says chat. You can put that on the side, and we are monitoring that to ask our speakers different questions. So we can come back to you, Silka, if we do have any other questions.
You bet.
In the meantime, thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. All right, we're going to go to Laura now from nicebats.com. And Laura, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, thanks for having me. And Silka, that was a lot of great information. And you were talking about the sound that bats make. If you go to our website and also on our Facebook page, we have had homeowners who have recorded the sounds and have sent them in to us. So we have posted a few of those sounds too. And it is something, once you hear it and you've heard that sound, you're like, oh my gosh, okay, now I know that is what a bat sounds like. And what we have a lot of is people will be calling into us, and they'll hear like some tapping on the sides of their walls, and a lot of time it's in the evening when the bats are getting ready to head on out to eat their bugs, and they're not for sure if they are bats or what they are in there. So we'll go out and we'll do an investigation, and we'll just take a look at the house. And the thing is that the housing development is moving into that bat habitat area. So you find that these bats do not care if your house is brand new or if your house is old. If they get taken out of where they like to live and where their habitat is at, they're going to find a new place to live. And they're able to detect if there is a small opening in that roof line of a home, and they're like, wow, I think we can get in here and roost during the day. And they will literally find the tiniest little hole, and a lot of times it's where the roof line meets another roof line, or in a dormer of a house. And so then they just crawl right in there, and it'll usually start with just a few bats. But what happens is like she had mentioned, each bat will have mother bat will have either 1 or 2 pups a year. And those bats are extremely territorial. They will not leave, 9 times out of 10, that place that they're living, unless they are excluded out of there. So then you have those babies living there. Then the next year, you'll add a couple more. You will not know until you get quite a few in there. And then you're all of a sudden hear a lot of stuff going on. And so what we would do is we'll come and do an attic inspection, and then we will put up some devices. You do not want anyone ever, ever, ever to say, oh, well, we'll put some stuff up there for them and we'll just kill them. That is not at all what you want to do. You want to put up some devices to allow those bats to fly out at night when they go to eat those bugs, and then they cannot get back in your home when they try. These devices will allow them to fly out, but they can't get back in. And they've done studies on bats where they have fingernail polished them as they came out of a home, and then they took them states away, and then they let them go. And the majority of those bats came right back to the exact same place that they were living. That just shows how territorial they are to the place that they are at. And it's not a bad idea to have like an attic inspection every once in a while, just to check and see. You may never ever see a physical bat in your house, but you may see their droppings, because a bat will drop when they come. Their droppings will, guano is what they call it. It'll drop when they go in and when they come out, and that's what marks their territory. So you can always tell if there's some droppings up there that that's probably where they're living. But they will love to go right underneath your insulation, or they'll go between the walls of the house, and that's where they'll roost. And they'll just hang there during the day, and then when the night comes, they'll work their way out and head on out. So you just want to make sure that, that you keep the house tightly sealed. And if you hear anything, the first time you hear something, and even this is something cute, if the kids are listening online, if you got a lot of kids on there, sometimes kids will say to their parents, I'm hearing something at night in my walls. And the parents will say, no, it's nothing, don't worry about it, you're just thinking it. But 9 times out of 10, those kids are right. And then the parent will go up and sleep up there, and then they're like, oh my, yeah, I am hearing things. So yeah, so they'll want to take care of that right away, because that colony will just continue to grow. And that's where the problems begin. Bats are extremely, extremely nice, very useful, very helpful, and they're very, very nice outside. But once they start living inside your home, it just really, really can cause a lot of havoc on that home.
We have a couple questions, it looks like. I have a question from Julia from Virginia, and she said, do bats want to get into the air-conditioned areas, or do they prefer a hot attic?
Well, someone else may be able to answer this a little better, but I think they love the hot attic. I mean, that's where they don't really want to be in your living quarters with you. They love being up in that attic. They love being underneath insulation, and they'll hang in the walls. And when you hear them moving around, like she had said, they wake up every once in a while. And that's a lot of times they're just finding a different climate, just kind of rustling their wings and going to hang somewhere else. So
if they're living in a wall or attic, we had another question. How do they know it's nighttime if they can't see outside?
That's their internal clock. They're very, very good at knowing, sleeping during the day, just kind of like, you know, us humans do. And then they'll wake up in the evening, they will know the bugs are out, and they will start flying. So it's how God created their internal clocks.
Can you have just one bat? Could one bat live in your house, or if you have bats, do you have bats?
You know, you can have just one. What we have always found when we've gone in the attic is males like to roost by themselves. And now if somebody else knows a little more of this answer, no, you know, chime in, but they like to roost by themselves. And then you will see a colony of them. And then the colony is a lot of times the mothers and the pups, and they'll be all clumped together.
Good.
The males like to be alone.
Yeah, Silka just confirmed with you. She said they like the warm attic. And another person wrote that the bats that she had in her house were definitely boys. So one more question. This might be for Silka. Silka, I think you're still on mute. But do tree bats like a specific kind of tree? See if we can get Silka off of mute here.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. They normally don't like a specific type of tree. What they're looking for is a specific size of tree. Usually the ones that are larger, and the ones that are kind of in between, or how do I want to say this? They're starting to decay. So they have a few holes or cracks or crevices, and the bark might be shedding a little bit. So older, bigger trees is a good generality. Like in South Dakota, a nice big cottonwood, or, you know, even in the Black Hills, ponderosa pine, larger ponderosa pine trees. And when I say larger, I mean larger diameter. So the trunk of the tree is a little bit fatter. It doesn't have to be tall necessarily.
Thank you. Thank you.
You bet.
This one might go back to Laura. It says, we are sure we have bats. We have seen the droppings near our house. We have several dormers. They're very noisy. And when I first heard them, I asked our roofer, and he thought it was birds on the roof. But now, if you have any suggestions, I would like some help.
Yes. Well, if you live in the area, we do come out and give a free inspection. If you don't live in the area, I would just get a hold of a pest control company that would specialize in bats. And if there is a roofer, roofers are really good at this if they are well aware of the pest control end of it, because they know how the roof line works. And so they're able to really know, are those vents okay? Is the flashing okay on the roof? Because a lot of times people will get the bat taken care of where it's coming and going in the one hole, but they don't fix the whole surrounding roof line. And so all you're doing is moving that bat from one corner of the house to the other corner. And so you want to make sure you get it all taken care of all the way around when you're starting. But yeah, we do give free inspections, so that's what I would recommend.
Another question came in, and this person said, we had a bat in our basement. How did it get there, and how did it get back out?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. People say this all the time, but what they do, and the reason why I know this is because our first home had bats, and we didn't have an attic access at all. But what they do is they'll come in that roof line, they'll go down the walls, and then if you have an unfinished basement, they'll come out the basement.
Wow.
And so that's where you'll find them. And sometimes they can work their way where we've had them where they found them in furnace filters. So they've actually did not have their ductwork tight enough, and a bat got in there and, you know, found their way to the furnace. But yeah, but they will find their way right back out. I mean, they're very smart.
We have questions rolling in. It's kind of fun. This person said the bats in her house would set off her smoke detectors with echolocation. Is that possible?
Gosh. That's a new one.
Silka, anything on that one?
I got nothing for you on that one. That's the first I've heard of that.
Interesting. That would be something fun to study.
Yeah.
That's me,
Oh, Sandy.
Sandy. We had the bats in our basement, and that's how we found out that we had bats down there, because the smoke detector would go off.
Oh.
And then to prove it, we had them in our attic as well, and so they set off the smoke detectors in the attic as well. So
Oh my goodness.
we're assuming that's what it was.
Well, yeah.
Well, this isn't supposed to be a commercial, but somebody did write that they had Laura's service come to her house and it worked great. You guys got the bat. Yeah.
Good. Well, it's one thing. We lived with them in our house, and that's how we got started. So I always tell people, we do this business out of compassion for the people who have it. I mean, when they call in, I can feel their pain. I know what it's like to have kids sleeping and the bat coming in. So
definitely. Silka also just said, when looking for someone to perform an exclusion, make sure they use a one-way exclusion device like Laura talked about. She said all other techniques are ineffective and oftentimes inhumane. So way to go.
Exactly.
All right. I think we got all the questions that are on here. So if we have more, Laura, hang around, because just like Silka, we'll come back to you. And we're going to switch now to Sandy Richter. If you can take yourself off mute. There we go. Sandy,
Hello, everyone.
Go.
Okay, can you hear me okay, Thea?
Sure can.
All right, fantastic. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Sandy. I'm at the outdoor campus in Sioux Falls, and I'm going to be talking about different activities that you can do with kids or on your own, just to keep that bat information going and to educate yourself a little bit more. We do quite a few bat programs here at the campus, and what I've noticed is that a lot of the bat classes tend to happen around Halloween, which is exactly why I wanted to do or be a part of a bat class that was happening in the summertime, because in South Dakota, bats are really good for eating insects, and they are so critical for taking care of our mosquito population and eating all those moths that are flying around at night. So it's really important to appreciate that fact. Usually in South Dakota at Halloween, the bats are either hibernating or have migrated away because it's too cold, because there aren't any bugs. So just wanted to throw that out there, because it's kind of actually fun to talk about the bats when they are being very active. We're also going to be doing a bat house giveaway. So everyone who is participating in this Zoom program, we have 20 bat houses, the BCI kind. One right here. But if you are local and can come within a week, we will be picking your name out of a hat, and we have 20 of those to give away. So super excited about that. What we did with our bat house, they come with the raw wood, but we painted ours black, and that helps absorb the heat a little bit better so that they can stay warm at night. So for kids activities, we've got a couple different games that you can play. One game that we play with a big class of students would be called the bat moth game. And what we're doing is we'll have two kids that will be blindfolded, and one would represent being the bat and one would be the moth. And we have two containers that have two different sizes of goodies inside that make a different noise when you shake them. And the idea is that they would be echoing back and forth. The rest of the class, we call that our tree of safety. And so we would have the kids stand in a circle holding hands in a big circle so that the bat and moth can roam around safely within that circle and not have to worry about running into a wall or anything like that. The bat would essentially make a noise, shake the sound, and the moth would replicate that sound. Now the bat is trying to get the moth, and I know in real life this isn't how it goes, but the moth, hearing the sound of the bat, would try to get away from the bat. And so it's really more of a listening game. So that's kind of a fun activity to play. And so we'll do that with blindfolds, or you'll use a bandana to put across your eyes. Another activity, another hearing game or matching game would be when we use film canisters. And what we'll do is, again, put different objects inside those film canisters, if you can find these, or another type of small canister, and put matching items in there, and then make it a matching sound game where you shake the different containers and do a sound game. One of the other senses that bats use a lot is smell, especially when they are with their young. So we can also use a smelling matching game by putting different cotton balls that have a different scent, either essential oil or something from the kitchen in it, and do a smelling matching game as well. And that's kind of a fun one to do. We'll talk about babies, baby bats, or pups as well. And this is always kind of fun for me. So you think about our baby bats, and we know that bats in general aren't real big in South Dakota. They're insect-eating bats, so they have a smaller body. But a baby bat, just to kind of give the kids an idea of what they are looking at, is I tell everybody to hold up your thumb. And when you look at your thumb, look at the first knuckle part of your thumb. And that's the size of a baby bat. Even got a picture of it.
Oh, wow.
So it kind of gives you an idea of just how tiny those little bats are. So think about the first knuckle on your thumb. So then we'll talk about the bat nursery sites, or I call it baby bat daycare, where we have some species of our bats that will have maternity wards or maternity groups or nursery groups. And some of these will be where they leave their young. Some are between 20 to 30 bats, and some can be up to 200 bats. So what I have here is a 12 by 12 piece of wood that I have cotton balls glued to it, okay? That cotton ball is about the size of my first knuckle on my thumb. This is 120 baby bats. Isn't that cool? Okay, so now imagine if you are a mama bat and baby bat is inside here. How is baby bat, or how is mama bat going to find baby bat? It's pretty kind of scary. I mean, imagine if you lost one of your kids and you're trying to find them in this big group. So there's two ways that they do that. It's going to be smell, and it's going to be by hearing as well. So they're going to have their own special scent, so mom can go and find her baby with that scent, but first she's got to get close to the area. So my example for this would be, imagine if you're shopping with and this would be me talking to kids. Imagine if you're shopping with mom at the grocery store or at the mall, and mom loses you, or you lose mom. She goes off and she starts looking at something. All of a sudden you realize that you're all alone. How do you find mom? Well, you could start off by screaming, "Mom, mom, mom," but how many moms turn around? A whole bunch of them. But if you have a special code word, or if you know mom's name, then you might not have quite as many turn around. So let's say that your special code word is purple elephants. Well, that's going to help narrow it down just a little bit more. So baby bat, mama bat will be saying purple elephant, purple elephant. That will help mom get a little bit closer, and then she'll be able to identify her baby by finding that smell. So that's kind of a fun activity just to kind of get the actual visualization of just what those nurseries could look like. And it's not very big, it doesn't have to be, but that's for 120 little bats. If you're looking for some actual hands-on activities or some book work, Game Fish and Parks has put out an activity book called Acrobats of the Night. This is a really neat book that has lots of information and worksheets that you can do. If you want one of these books sent to you, just drop me your email address in the chat box, and I will make sure that I get a copy sent to you. There's also the website that Silka was talking about. This is an amazing website, and I'm going to just share that screen with you. It gives you a lot of really good information, Bat Conservation International. Lots of really good information about what these guys are working on internationally throughout the world. But if you want some more hands-on stuff, go to About Bats. They've got a whole bunch of information here. Bat basic information, the different profiles of bats. Here's your bat houses, designs for that. What to do if you find an injured one, and then games and activities. This is a fun place to be. So they have the Bat Squad. So cool. So you look on this and scroll down here, and they have these little videos about helping out bats that kids have put together. So this is a really neat activity with kids. And then they have projects that you can do. So we can calculate the value of bats, and they have a whole curriculum. They've got background information if you're a homeschool mom, or if you are just completely geeking out about this bat stuff. All kinds of information and resources, and an answer page. That's really helpful. That can help you learn a little bit more about bats and incorporating that in, which I just think is super cool. And so they have a couple different videos that you can watch, and then activities that go with those. But then they also do craft projects. So if you want to go that direction, that's okay too. Let's go back here. So they have some bat mask that you can do. They've got coloring pages. Recipes, I don't think they're using actual bats, maybe just things that look like bats. And then they can pull into the whole Halloween aspect of it, and they've got some jack-o'-lantern designs as well. So some really good information there for you as well, and just a plethora of information on that site, and really good ways of learning more about bats and bats in our areas. Okay, I want to stop sharing. There we go. All right, I'm looking around on my board. Oh, some other things, books. I love books. So lots of good books out there that talk about bats. We have The Secret Lives of Bats. This would be a more adult reading. But there are also all kinds of kid books about bats. There's a whole series on different bats that live throughout the world that were put together. So you can get a different series, or look out at your library. This has got probably 12 different bat books, and each book is for one type of bat or another. This is the little brown bat. And it's got really good science information. It's not just storytelling. It's talking about, sorry, we're trying to figure this out. Talking about, you know, their body parts, what the good they do, and how important they are. So really fun stuff out there. So I think that's what I've got. Any questions about that stuff?
We do have a few questions. You've got some emails rolling in, Sandy, for some people who would like to have the acrobats of the night.
Okay.
And let's see, I had a question about the website, which I'm posting on there right now. How to get to that website should be in the chat right now. A couple questions. I'm not sure who these are going to be for, but possibly Silka. And Silka did mention that with your moth and bat game, there have been studies showing some moth species are avoiding echolocating bats. So that's really cool. Had no idea. I have a question that says, since Sioux Falls sprays for mosquitoes, does that affect the bats who may eat them? Might be a Silka question. Laura, not sure.
Not sure.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure really on that one.
Okay. Well, that's something we can check into too, and we can get back to the person who asked that question. Are bats surviving wind turbines?
I can try and speak to that one.
Mm-hmm.
What's known about bats dying at wind turbines to date is that the species that I said were migratory, those are the ones that have the high mortality rates at wind turbines. There's really, for a group of wildlife species, there's still a lot that's not known about bats. And one thing we really didn't know a lot about was bat migration until they started dying. A lot of work went into figuring out, you know, what species and when and things like that. And some of the things that they've learned is that the 3 migratory species, especially hoary bats, are dying at higher rates than other bat species, in particular during their fall migration. And their fall migration, you know, you might think is similar to bats, but it's not. At least in South Dakota, probably the peak of fall migration is now, mid-July through mid-August. And there's work that's going into ways to reduce those mortality rates. So things that will make a bat avoid a wind turbine. So I'm not even sure exactly how they're doing it, some sort of noise or sound. But one of the more effective things is keying in on the wind speed and temperature at a wind farm at a particular time. So we know that bats will fly most often during warmer nights and calmer nights. So if during that migratory period, during the fall especially, if they shut down their turbines at a certain temperature and wind speed, that they'll reduce the number of bats that die. So let's see, are bats surviving wind turbines? Technically no, and it's kind of a concern if you think about the lifespan of a bat and the reproductive capability of a bat. You know, they just can't recover from higher mortality rates, like say a mouse or something would. So no, they're not surviving it, but we're learning more, and we're working on ways to reduce that impact to bat species.
Maybe this question is also for you, Silka. Are all bats protected?
I can speak to South Dakota. Bats in South Dakota are classified as non-game, so essentially there's no legal season on a bat. So with that, there's protections implied. But I'll also speak to threatened and endangered species laws. So in South Dakota, we do have a state law, and we have species that are listed and protected under that state law. We don't have any bat species on the South Dakota list. Then there's the federal T&E law, the Endangered Species Act. And there's one bat species that lives in South Dakota that is federally threatened, and that's the northern long-eared bat. And that species was listed because of the impacts of white nose syndrome. The species is found statewide in South Dakota, especially along our Missouri River corridor, those cottonwood gallery forests, and then also in the Black Hills of South Dakota. So that is one federally threatened species, bat species that we have in the state.
Good. That was a really good question. Sandy, I see that she's also answered the question, but just for everybody else, what's the name of the children's series of books you just showed? Can you take your off of mute and let us know about those?
Okay, it is called the Checkerboard Animal Library, and there are 2 different sets. There's a bat set 1 and 2. And if you are in the Sioux Falls area, once we open up all the way again, we do have this set in our library, and so you can make a special arrangement, and I can see if we can lend that out to you. Again, when things get back to normal, we also have a bat crate that you can check out, and it has that set in there as well. So that would be something to kind of think about as well. I kind of had a thought on the mosquito spray. Does that spray, and I don't know, I'm just asking, does that spray drop the mosquito? Does that kill the mosquitoes right away? If it does, bats go after live prey, correct? So then they wouldn't necessarily be going. So I would say it'd probably be more loss of habitat or food. I know specifically here in Sertoma Park, we have asked the city not to spray for bats in our park for a couple reasons. One, so that the bats can do their business, but then also so that that spray doesn't get into the butterfly house duct system, because they have to pay for their butterflies, and that's kind of an expensive loss. So.
Looks like another question. I put up a bat house in my yard a number of years ago, but all it attracted were wasps. Do bats ever evict them on their own? I live near ravines with mature oaks and have regularly seen bats already. Would it be useful to put up bat boxes anyway?
Laura, do you want to take that one?
Well, am I off of mute?
Whoops, she's on mute.
Okay, there we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so what we have done some investigation into these bat houses and what is the best way to attract the bats. And people have been telling us that it's when you transport their guano, which is their droppings, and you move those to the bat house, you're directing them towards where you want them to go. And so if it's kind of funny, but you can now Google online and you can actually buy, you know, this bat bait kind of stuff that you can put on it. And then we had another gentleman tell us that he actually soaked his bat house and had it not be so nice and shiny, and he had a little moss on it, kind of more like a tree feel. And he said that eventually got him to start living there. So there's lots of different methods. I'm not for sure. I haven't tried them myself, but that's what we've heard out there. So
with the bat houses, if it's it's going to be a summer roost, so it's females and they're young, and they're looking for certain temperatures and moisture conditions, and those temperatures are going to be warm. Like we talked about, they like the attic versus the air conditioner. So, trying to make sure that a bat house is in a warm area, so maybe not the north side of a house, maybe more the south side. One of the things that was talked about earlier was that the color of a bat house. If you remember in those photos that I showed of the 3 different types of bat houses, they were stained like a natural brown, so a darker color. And there were also rough hued, or it's a type of cut. It's the lumber that was used was not smooth. It was, more rough, to where, a bat could potentially grip onto more natural. So I think temperature and also the proximity of prey. If you're in an area, say like in the middle of a grassland, nowhere near water, that might not be the best place to put a bat house. But if there's, water nearby, or like a lake, a river, a wetland where there's a food source, that might be a plus. So I'd say temperature and, in an area where they can get food relatively easily. But if there's wasps in that bat house, bats aren't going to use it, because they do not like to be stung by wasps. That's too bad.
Yeah, nobody does. That's not a fun thing. Good. Well, it looks like we have gone through all of the questions on here. Just a couple notes here. If you do live in the Sioux Falls area and can pick up a bat house within a week at the Game Fish and Parks Outdoor Campus, please do send us your email. Actually, send us an email to OLLI, OLLI, at usd.edu. And we will do a drawing for those 20 bat houses that Sandy has available. Sorry to the people that live far away. We just don't have any money for shipping, but really, yeah, and Stacy just posted olli at usd.edu in the chat, so you can get our email address. I would like to thank Silka and Sandy and Laura for being